Mark, YouTube is ready.
All right. Is everybody else ready? I guess so. All right, I'll start. Let me just get something up on my screen. So welcome everybody to the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education meeting for November 9th, 2021. In accordance with the Illinois Open Meetings Act, this meeting is being held virtually, and our superintendent, Dr. Leali, is at the Village Hall in case there are any in-person public comments. Anne, could you please call the roll?
I can. Andy Duran.
Present.
Ann Hill, present. Mark Berry.
Present.
Carrie Steinbach.
And
Hi,
did it
Carrie.
not work? I'm here.
Tim Penich.
Present.
Amy Connell Donahue.
Present.
Lauren Hirsch.
Present.
Great, we have a quorum. We can begin. Could you guys all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we do in every meeting, we offer the opportunity for public comment, whether it's written and submitted early or live in person or via Zoom. Shelley, do we have anything on Zoom or written to read today?
No public comment at this time.
And nobody there live in person, I assume, Dr. Leali? No.
Nope.
Okay. We also, every meeting, offer the opportunity for the board to offer a future agenda item, a suggestion for a future agenda item, or a brief discussion item that we need to touch on tonight. Does anybody have anything they want to raise? If anybody thinks of anything later, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Dr. Leali. Now we move to item 5, which is recognition, and I'm going to totally step back and let Dr. Leali handle that.
I am actually going to be reading an entire proclamation during my superintendent's report, recognizing the outstanding work of our Board of Education. But in order to expedite Dr. Montgomery's time, we are going to add that to my presentation and begin with the Portrait of a Graduate tonight.
Okay. So Portrait of a Graduate is a cooperative venture that all 3 districts, Lake Bluff 65, District 67 in Lake Forest, and 115 in Lake Forest, will be beginning to work on cooperatively. And Dr. Leali and I sat in on a introductory presentation to that a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. I believe we brought that to the board briefly with an overview, so you have some background on that. And tonight, Dr. Montgomery, who's the superintendent of both Lake Forest districts, will be here to discuss that with us and answer questions.
Yes, thank you. And we appreciate Dr. Matt Montgomery coming to give us some time tonight. We just really going to be presenting an overview of what the process looks like on a high level and what the engagement should look like from the stakeholder groups that will be represented in the process, and would like to give you an opportunity as a board to ask us any questions about the process before we engage beginning in January. So Dr. Montgomery.
Thank you, Dr. Leali. And thank you, everybody, for allowing me this opportunity to visit with you tonight. As still the relative new guy in the area, it has been amazing to get to know these communities and to really immerse myself in all of the wonderful things that are happening in Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, and Knollwood. This idea of a Portrait of a Graduate is not a new one. In fact, it is done by premier districts across the country, many of which are in the North Shore. And when the idea came about here about creating one, Lisa and I were talking and ideating on, could we come together as a 3-district entity to form one Portrait of a Graduate? And that certainly hit some synergy about how we can continue to find ways to align, because we are one community, even though that we're made up of different subsets. This is work that I had the pleasure of working or leading in Ohio, so it is not foreign to me. And I saw it transform the district that I previously served first in a portrait of a graduate and then ultimately into a strategic plan. So when Mark and Lisa came, I think they came to see the presentation with the 115 board. We kind of, you could feel the synergy in the room. And we even talked about, is there possibilities to look at strategic planning down the road? How can we ensure that we are all, partnering together in the most wonderful way? When I was interviewing, there was a lot of questions about how am I going to partner with 65? How are we going to build relationships and inroads? And I think that this is a testament of one way to do that. And I think that the partnership that Lisa and I have created in this very early stage in our partnership is something that I'm proud of. And I think will just continue to grow as our leadership tenure increases. You have a phenomenal superintendent, and I'm not saying that just because she's here, and to partner with her is a gift. And I'm thrilled that I get to be able to work with her on a regular basis. I'm going to share my screen just to show you some slides that were shared in the presentation when Battelle for Kids came to District 115. So once I click share, if someone could just confirm that they can see the screen.
Got it.
Excellent. So I would like to just very quickly go over the process from a high level, who it makes up or is engaging in the work, and then some examples of a finished product, and then I'll finish with questions. And thank you for allowing me to go first, because right now we're having a joint board meeting with all 14 of them in the room adjacent to me, and my deputy is running the show until I run over there. So thank you for allowing me to go first. What you see right here is the Portrait of a Graduate design process. I really think that we're experimenting with the idea of calling it a portrait of a learner. And the reason for that is I think that it really encompasses what we're going after, because it's bigger than just the graduate, because you have 2 elementary districts that are coming together to find a North Star. But the process is really created into 4 meetings with the design team. And the questions that we'll be asking, or the themes of those 4 meetings, are on the screen with you right now. So the first meeting is pulling the design team together and just asking how the world has changed. And we think together on that idea and really examine, has it changed? What has changed? What is resonating with us and what isn't as communities? The second meeting really talks about the competencies that students need to be successful in their immediate now as well as their future. And those of you who are in the business world know that people are changing jobs frequently. The pandemic has really reinforced the importance of being nimble and having agency, so you can evolve as your area of work evolves or change, because we want to, our job, in my opinion, is to, I stole this from somebody else, is to ensure that our kids don't graduate from college back into their parents' basement. So we need to give them the core competencies so they are able to be agile and successful regardless of what life throws at them. And that's what we'll be talking about in meeting 2. Meeting 3 is developing that shared vision and really coming together and trying to figure out what the portrait could look like. And then finally, we share what the portrait in draft form in the last meeting prior to it going to market. So this design team, which is made up of 75 to 100 people, can you see stakeholder engagement now? I'm just making sure the slide deck is changed. Thank you.
Yep.
It's going to be 75 to 100 people. I think with 3 districts, we're probably going to land around 100. But you should know that it's made up of students, teachers, parents, leaders, faith leaders. Like today, I was with the ministerial group of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff. We had a wonderful lunch, and they gave me an opportunity to visit with them during the day. Some of those members should be a part of this as faith leaders, business leaders. The president of the college should be a part of this process, and then other agencies. So I'm thinking of Andy right now and his work. How are we bringing these outside entities with us to join in on this conversation?
And Matt, really quickly, those 100 are outside of the board members, correct? So there are 3 boards will not take up 21 of the seats of the 100, correct?
Absolutely, and thank you for reminding me of that. So what we would do is we would create or announce board meetings, so all 21 of you can participate, but you will not be taking up 21 seats of that 75 to 100. So it could be 121 if all of you showed up, for example, if we used 100. I think that's important that all of you are able to come. And in my previous district, the board involvement was high. And it allows you to be more comfortable when we come to you when this process is over and ask you to vote in support of the portrait because you saw it being developed each step of the way. So that's something that I would encourage you to participate in. I'm going to keep going, then I'll open up to questions just in lieu of time. I want to give you an example of a finished portrait, and this is Indian Prairie School District 204. But you can see there's some image usually associated with it, and then there are core competencies that are defined. So theirs is resilient, communication, creativity, innovation, citizenship, critical thinking, problem solving, resilience, flexibility, and adaptability. And there is more content than just this. And some board members in my past, not Lake Forest, but in Revere in Ohio, said, well, Matt, we're doing this and you're just going to get this drawing. Well, it's much more than that. So each one of those competencies is defined and agreed upon, and then it translates into the work we're going to engage in as districts. So yes, it is a visual representation of our North Star, but it is far more robust than just this image. And I want to give you some examples on this slide. You can do any, and these are small, so forgive me, but if you just Google search portrait of a graduate, there are countless examples of different ones that have been created. Some are similar, and I have had questions in the past, is this cookie cutter? Are we all do we know what we're gonna land on? No, and I know that from lived experience that my Revere's portrait was very different from previous districts that we use as examples when the board said, you're just gonna come up with the same thing and we don't need to go in the process. Each community has unique needs and different things they wanna focus on. So I will take a breath and see what questions you may have, if any.
I'm going to give you a break and talk a little bit about curriculum articulation and strategic planning. So we want to make sure that people understand that this is not the entirety of a strategic plan, but this is sort of, as Matt's discussed before, like a North Star. So this is where we're headed, and this is what we want for all of our students at the end of their journey in our two districts, either 67 and 115 or 65 and 115. And then from that, we've talked about before, backwards mapping. So if that's our vision, how do we get there? And what does that look like at each phase in the process? What does that look like for a middle school student? What does that look like for our elementary students going all the way down to pre-K? And having those big competencies at the end, knowing that those are our goals, we can look through lots of different lenses. We can look at our processes and procedures. We can look at each curricular area. We can look at where we're embedding assessments to that end. And so if we don't have those pieces in place, then it's harder for us to figure out, where do we really want to spend our time? What's valued should be measured, right? And so if these are the things that we value as a community, then we should be looking at offering students an opportunity to show us how they're doing, right? And then it also offers us an opportunity to discuss between districts, what does that actually look like? What does resilience look like? If a student is resilient, or if a student is a critical thinker, or if a student is a good citizen, what does that mean? And can we actually offer them opportunities to show that they're doing those things that we're asking them to do? And I think what this offers us is an opportunity to collaborate 65 and 67 together and look at what we're doing as elementary districts in terms of benchmarking. And then it also offers an opportunity to vertically articulate with the high school, not that we don't already, but in a different way, right? So we would be looking at performance indicators that might be new for our teachers to look at. So we would be looking at planning strategically. Obviously, as a board, we're looking to refresh our strategic plan. With this in place, it would give us some more guidance on the next version of our strategic plan, if that makes sense.
So let me just ask a question. I think I understand, but I just want to make sure. Our portrait of our graduate is, basically once we get there, our big whole goal and our strategic plan, our curriculum, our policies and procedures, all the things that we do from pre-K all the way up into the high school lead to that. Basically, they all funnel into that, and that's the end goal. Is that
They should be
Yeah.
leading there. Yeah. So we should be looking at alignment all the way through the system then.
Great.
Which is why we're really, really excited to be involved in this, because as a K-8 district, it's hard to plan for the end, knowing that the kids are going right on to the high school. And so to be able to do that planning at the end of the high school experience and really working together as two districts to make that happen is really exciting for all of our teachers and our communities.
I like the model that you showed. You know, my initial thought was it would be great to have everybody on the same page with curriculum going into the high school, as having a freshman in high school and kids in high school. But I never really thought about the other pieces of it, like the resilience, like some of the things I think, like citizenship, I think we probably do a really good job with. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but like resilience and the other pieces that you listed weren't even on my radar. I think that's really important.
It allows you to have a more comprehensive look at how we're meeting the needs of the whole child.
Mhm.
And I think now more than ever as a society, we are seeing all too prevalent needs for social emotional well-being to be addressed, global citizenship to be addressed. How do we as a community want to create thinkers that will go out in the world and be successful? And it's often those soft skills that are as important as the curriculum.
I have a question. When I left the introductory meeting that you did with Patel at the high school a few months ago, maybe, I was kind of thinking of this the way you initially led off with Portrait of a Graduate. I assumed we were talking about our dreams and visions for a portrait of a high school graduate, since we all feed in. But then you also said something about maybe we want to name it or rename it or something, some other titling, Portrait of a Learner, because this is not just about that end goal. And then these other, the conversation that Amy just brought up about, she likes some of the unique aspects of it. I could imagine our communities are very different. So we love some of what is unique about our communities and our community schools. And maybe you guys, Lisa and Matt, could talk about how we could all have a vision for a graduate at the high school level, because I think that makes total sense. But how does it allow for individuality, yet curricular planning, articulation, and all that to get there together, but allow for individual unique community approaches to getting there separately?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit about how I see that happening, but Matt, jump in too. I mean, I feel like this is the end goal, and these competencies are big, broad concepts. There's lots of different ways to help students experience these concepts, and teachers in each of our communities and parents who will be working with us in this process on curriculum review teams or in different stakeholder groups would have those as a backdrop. This is what we're looking for. And we probably start with, where are we offering those opportunities already? That's what is working already in our system that's leading us to those goals. But then where can we decide on things where we can add additional opportunities or look at our curriculum through that lens? But just like any other curriculum mandate or anything that we're working under with multiple districts working on the same outcome, there's lots of different ways to get to that outcome. And I see this no different than that. So we would be working in our teams in our buildings, and we might be working across district on some things and having discussions. And then we might be working up a little bit and talking with discussions in the high school, but there's always that room to individualize and tailor the experience for the kids in your room, for the teachers and their comfort level, for parents in the community. I mean, that's what we do, right? We're differentiating, we're addressing the interests and needs of the community. So that's kind of always the lens I think we're looking at these big ideas through. But Matt, did you have anything to add on that?
I think it's perfect. I think that this is, you have your vision, your mission, and your competencies. So your vision is your aspirational, your mission is what you're about and doing, and then your vision, or Portrait of a Graduate, forgive me, is your competencies that you want these kids to walk away with. They materialize themselves in many different ways based on which grade band you're talking about and the unique features within the given communities. And I know that I speak for 67 and 115 in that even they are nuanced, and they will want to have their own ownership of how they see this materializing in their subset of this greater community. The same would be true for you. And I certainly want to make sure that we're honoring the individual entities while still working on common 20,000 foot kind of directional viewpoints.
Matt, can you talk a little bit about Battelle as in your experience with them, just briefly? And, if you had looked at other places to facilitate this work in Ohio, other organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. So so we looked at 3 different firms in Ohio. I think I actually looked at 4 different ones. Battelle is the one that I wanted first because they're the national, they do this work nationally. And the high flyer districts across the country that I know of and respect pick Battelle. I thought that my board would never pick Battelle just because the Revere board, I love them dearly, but sometimes they want to go in a different direction just because they want to go in a different direction. So we looked at 4 different firms, vetted them, looked at the cost, and then actually my board saw a presentation at a state conference, like our version of III, and heard a district talking about their partnership with Battelle, and then asked me to double back and bring them into the fold. So it was really a board level decision, even though I was looking at 3 other firms, because I didn't think they would go with Battelle. They are the best in the business. They have done a great deal of work in the North Shore and in Illinois, so it's not unique to Ohio. You should know that. So New Trier, Sunset Ridge, Winnetka, I'm cheating over here on the right. I've got that presentation I have earlier. I just didn't show you the slide. Lincolnshire, Indian Prairie, Grant Community. So they are not, it's not just, I don't want you to have the impression that Matt brought this group from Ohio because they're based out of Ohio and I'm just impressing upon my previous experiences. This is a national group that is doing phenomenal work and transforming how we are defining success with students across the country.
So you're not just a Buckeye, Matt?
The Buckeye Marks.
What I like about that list of districts too, is that that's a really diverse list of districts in terms of size of district, community demographics, there are North Shore districts, but if you look at that list, so there's definitely some variance in the kinds of districts and size of districts on that list. And so that was really appealing to me too, because obviously they've worked with a lot of different types of organizations. Matt, I know your time is limited. Can you talk really quickly? I know that we have some dates outlined in January. And those dates have been put out. We don't have specific times yet, but do we have any thoughts, or will we be talking soon about how we will have community involvement solicited? How will we be getting volunteers for this work?
So that's a conversation that we're starting to have here. Like it's on the list of things we need to talk about. So we'll be partnering up to figure that out. In my past experience, we just selected people. Because I have been burnt in the past about doing a cattle call and then my previous boards having arguments about who we're going to pick. So that is not something I'm overjoyed about, but I serve at the pleasure of now 21 when we throw you guys in the mix. So we'll kind of give a recommendation to you, and then if it's not settling with any one of the 3 boards, we'll recalibrate. But my initial response is we are going to ask for suggestions from the boards of people that they think should be included, and then we will also come up with a list ourselves to see where we land. But it'll be important that there is representation of all 3 organizations and it's equal, so no one feels as if one group is getting more attention than the others. The dates.
And I think,
oh, go ahead, Lisa.
No, the only other piece we really talked about was making sure we have representation of different groups in the community as well. So that's part of being strategic, because we want to make sure we have different all the different areas in the community, different demographic groups, parents of different age students, et cetera.
And then I see a question, why didn't it go out? Mark, you asked about why didn't it go out to bid? And it didn't hit the bid threshold for $25,000 or more when you're dividing it among 3 different entities. So that's why it was, it doesn't even need to be board approved really. But I think that it may be I'll let you decide that. But it didn't hit that threshold. And then when you divide it by half, it's even, or in 3 ways, it's even a smaller quantity.
And I think just for transparency, we're talking 11,000 per district, correct?
Correct.
Yep, and just for transparency, it is a good thing for us to talk about and probably approve publicly. I just think that that goes a long way.
Are there
Thanks,
any
Matt.
questions for Dr. Montgomery? I know you have another meeting happening right now.
Can I ask just a quick question? First, a quick comment. I appreciate you making it clear that we're an equal partner in this. I had some concerns, not necessarily based on anything, but just having our own administration and being a smaller district, I'm happy to hear that we'll be equally represented in this process. But just a quick question about the actual design team meeting with 100 people or 100 plus people. How does that actually work and look? Is that just like someone in front leading, or how do you actually engage people to get their ideas? How does that work? And
So this is what Patel is an expert in, and one of the key reasons of why they're important to partner with. So what they will do is they will use they'll have a presenter who's really a facilitator. The first meeting, there'll be more information given. The rest of the meetings, it will be much more collaborative in nature. There's an actual switch where there has to be like some baseline education, and then it moves into more collaboration. But there are table facilitators that are collecting information. There are online real-time polls that are happening for the individual. There's polls that happen after, or questionnaires that go after each meeting, and those are all synthesized in the back end with Patel. So there's ways for groups of people, like the whole group, to participate, small groups, pairs, and individual, and it's layered every meeting to make sure that even though there's a lot of people in the room, every voice is captured. And then on the back end, they're looking for trends, and they'll be communicating with Lisa and I to try to figure out how to make sense of all of the different data points that are coming in. Lisa, I have time for one more, or 14 people are going to start yelling at me.
Yep,
Anybody?
In a loving way.
always
Yeah.
with,
I'll just say thank you. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for the collaboration. I'm really glad you and Dr. Leali or you and Lisa are talking and communicating. It's great for all of us. So thanks for being here.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Dr. Montgomery. We appreciate your time. Good luck with the gang of 14.
They're not that scary.
Thank you.
I would just close by saying, if people are our massive viewing audience or our board or people online watching, if you think of questions or stuff that comes up after chewing on this for a little bit, don't hesitate to email Dr. Leali or myself or people on the board, and we will funnel it to the right people and try to get answers out to people as we learn more. But this is still an evolving project and concept that Dr. Leali and Dr. Montgomery will keep us posted on.
absolutely.
Okay, so we are
Mark,
going to.
Can we do the LBES report? Is there a way to move because we have
course.
teachers and students here, and I would love to have them be able to go next.
As long as there's no objections from anyone on the board, we can rearrange as you see is necessary. So go ahead.
Okay, we have a presentation here tonight. Mrs. Strauss is here with some students who will be talking about the experience at Atwood, I believe. And I am going to turn it over. Miss Bay is not able to be here tonight with us, so Mrs. Strauss is taking this one tonight for the team.
Yes, I am. Well, hello, everyone. It's nice to see everybody. I would like to introduce, we have one child from each of our classes representing the 5th grade, and we are going to tell you all about our one-day Atwood experience, which was awesome. Sophie, would you like to start, sweetie?
Yes. My name is Sophie Marcusell, and I am from Mrs. Strauss's class. This year, we were able to go to Atwood Outdoor Education Center for a day. My favorite activity at Atwood was Predator Prey because I liked how Predator Prey was very active and competitive. Based on what you were assigned, carnivore, omnivore, herbivore, your goal was to be clever and strategic on what you need to do. My goal as a herbivore was to avoid omnivores and carnivores and collect more plants and water. One interesting aspect of the game was the teachers also played as hunters. They could attack whomever they wanted. As a herbivore, I did a very good job on not being captured by carnivores or omnivores. But Mr. Nillis and Mrs. Strauss caught me a couple of times. That wasn't very fun. I had a blast at Atwood, especially playing Predator Prey. I'd like to congratulate everybody who won. What an awesome field trip we had at Atwood. Thank you for the opportunity to have this experience.
Thank you, Sophie.
Awesome. All right, Jacob, you're up. Is Jacob in?
He's just coming in now, Mary.
Okay, then how about Beverly? Are you here?
Hi, my name is Beverly Sanderson and I'm in Miss Plapp's class. Another activity we did at Atwood was Birds of Prey. It was a great experience. All of the fifth graders got to learn about all different types of birds. We learned so many cool things, like for example, the barn owl that they brought out to show to us had such good hearing, it could hear every single one of our heartbeats. That's why we all stayed quiet so we wouldn't hurt his ears. After that, we followed the leaders to where all of the birds stayed. We learned about their backstory, why they look the way they are, their diet, and more. My favorite activity at Atwood was Predator versus Prey, because we got to let our energy out. And even though there were boundaries, we could go almost anywhere because there was so much field area. We learned about carnivores, omnivores, and herbivores. We learned about what they eat and what their predators and preys are. Thank you for the opportunity to have this experience.
Thank you, Beverly.
All right, Jacob, you all ready?
Yes. Hi, my name is Jacob Kasdan. I'm in Mr. Nellis's class. Another activity we did at Atwood was archery. Our whole class went into the woods to a big wall with targets and 3 bows. The instructors taught us how to shoot, and we all stood or sat on a log while 3 people shot 5 arrows. As this repeated, the people who shot arrows played on like a stone plate and got yelled at for being loud and making it hard for the shooters. But we learned how to shoot arrows and how to be safe with arrows and bows. Mr. Nellis, my teacher, was taking photos, which we were able to see afterward. Plus, kids were standing on the log when they were not really supposed to, and it was loud, and so on. And yeah. Okay, my favorite activity at Atwood was Predator Prey because when we were running in the woods, it was scarily fun, but I felt like I was going to die when I got chased multiple times. There were carnivores who had red headbands and could eat/tag colors lower, which are yellow and green. And there were also omnivores, which were yellow headbands, herbivores, which were green headbands, and teachers were hunters with no headbands. And the goal is to collect water and food from signs while you hold your stomach, which is a piece of paper. And my brother said before I went that the walk was long, which was true, but it was the best game of tag you'll ever play, which was true also. And it was really fun, but your clothes do get those annoying bugs that stick on you.
Awesome. Bryson, you up?
Jacob.
Hi, my name is Bryson Bowie, and I am in Mrs. Lennox's 5th grade class. Another activity we took part in Atwood was called Alpha Wolf. During this class, we learned about food webs, also how wolves travel in packs and communicate through howling. Also, we learned how there are no wolves in Atwood Park because wolves need larger amounts of land to survive. We took part in a simulation and we traveled around Atwood Park like a wolf pack, looking for the alpha wolf. We would howl and listen for the howl back. Once we found the alpha wolf, we showed submission by laying on our backs and whimpering. The alpha wolf accepted us to the pack. My favorite activity from Atwood was the tomahawk throw. The tomahawk throw is where you throw the tomahawk at this big block of wood and you try to stick it on. Thank you for the opportunity to have this experience.
Thanks, Bryson.
I would just like to say to the board, thank you, and to Lisa, thank you so much for letting us have the day opportunity. It's such a great program. We as Lake Bluff have been going for over 40 years, and it is such an important part of our education. And I would just like to thank you for that. And if there isn't any sleepovers next year, I would highly suggest again the day trip. Thank you. It was awesome. I've been coordinator for Atwood for years and years and years, and we just love it. It's one of our favorite 5th grade activities.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Strauss, and Bryson, Sophie, Beverly, and Jacob for being here tonight to explain. It sounds amazing. And teachers were texting me, they were having such a great time with some of your favorite activities. The Predator Prey one I've heard is amazing. Right, Mrs. Rourke? Thank you
I
so
just
much.
want to quickly say, no offense to anybody else in the Zoom room here, but that's probably my favorite board presentation of all time. So thanks for bringing that to life for all of us. I've heard so many things about Atwood for so many years, but being able to hear that, from you was really cool. So thanks for being here.
And I have to say, as somebody who attended Atwood 30 years ago, it was so cool to hear. And Predator and Prey was definitely my favorite game too, way back when. So thanks guys for sharing.
That's great. Thank you very much.
All right.
Nice night. Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
Bye,
Go
guys.
ahead,
Thank
Steve.
you.
So Dr. Leale, I'm not sure where we pick up. We back to recognition or something else?
So we are going to go ahead with our presentations. Unfortunately, our auditor is not able to be here right now. So we're going to go ahead with Jay's long-term projections and tentative levy recommendations.
All right. There are no reports to cover. Are we going to circle back to that?
We can come back to the reports.
Okay. So we're all over the place. All right. So Jay's.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Jay,
So-
are you ready for your long-term projections? Oh, you're muted or not. You don't look muted, but I can't hear you.
Can't hear you. Nope.
Okay, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna go to my superintendent's report, to our administrative team reports, but unfortunately, since we can't hear Jay, we're not gonna do that one yet. So we will start with, mine if there's no objections to that.
Go right ahead.
All right. So we are recognizing our board members this month. And I would like to say, before I read this formal and official proclamation, that I would just like to thank officially this new board. We talked a lot with the last board about some of the big things that they've led through. And this board coming together as a new board in the middle of all the things that were happening this summer and all that continues to happen, and really forming a team and working together to lead this district has been pretty incredible. I appreciate your support of not only myself, but also the district, our teachers and staff, our students. It's really obvious that you all care a lot about Lake Bluff and our school districts. As I just always want to remind folks, when we recognize board members, this is an unpaid volunteer experience that takes a lot of time and effort. You're always prepared for our meetings. You're always active participants and always thinking with kids first. So I want to thank you. And I am now going to read the School Board Members Day resolution. I think Board Members Day is actually on November 15th, but we are reading it a little bit early. And I wish I could do the accent right now that I think Carrie volunteered that she could do, but we will find another time for that. Whereas school board members are elected to sit in trust for their diverse communities, and in that capacity are charged with meeting the community's expectations and aspirations for the public education of their children. And whereas school board members are entrusted with the guardianship and wise expenditure of scarce tax dollars, and they are responsible for maintaining and preserving the buildings, grounds, and other areas of the school district that the community has put in their trust. And whereas school board members are responsible for providing leadership that ensures a clear shared vision of public education for their schools that sets high standards for the education of all students, and requires the effective and efficient operation of their districts. And whereas school board members adopt public policy to give voice to that leadership and employ a superintendent to administer board policy, and are also responsible for the regular monitoring of the district's performance and compliance with state policy. And whereas school board members selflessly volunteer countless hours to public service with no compensation. And whereas school districts have faced enormous challenges over the past 2 years, and the strong, dedicated leadership provided by the Lake Bluff School District Board of Education has allowed student learning and success to continue. And whereas employers are supportive of their employees who serve as school board members, generously lending support and time, employers give their employees the opportunity to better serve the needs of the school districts and communities they represent through sometimes tremendous sacrifice to the employer. And whereas decisions made by school board members directly impact the quality of life and safety in their communities, placing them as the front line of American democracy, therefore, be it resolved by the Lake Bluff Elementary School District 65 that we proclaim November 15th, 2021 as School Board Members Day, as a way to honor these citizens who devote their time and energy for the successful education of our children and our future leaders. Thank you for everything you do for our students and staff in our community. We really do appreciate you.
Thank you.
Our silent round of applause. I still have more to my report. Moving on, we do have an update on COVID type issues. So on the testing front, we're working to have it begin next Tuesday. And that is for the screening testing that will be completed with Passport Health. So they've been on site. We have rosters ready of students who have consented to screening testing. As a reminder, when we asked folks to consent to testing, that was a two-part ask. One was about screening testing, the weekly random testing, and one was about being able to test to stay. And so we have identified those parents who have consented for weekly screening, which should begin on Tuesday of next week, which is coincidentally also the date of our optional vaccine clinic that will be happening at Lake Bluff Elementary School. We are excited that we had a very good response to the joint vaccine clinics that have been organized by primarily District 67 and 65. As 115 students have been eligible for some time. This is really an elementary initiative. And we have basically two full clinics. The Lake Bluff clinic was full within hours, I think. I'm not sure if there are slots out for the Lake Forest Elementary one beginning on the 20th. But we have maps, we've had site visits as of today. I want to thank Jay and his team. There's going to be a lot of work in the custodial department to make sure that we are set up and ready for that. As a reminder, that is optional. There is no vaccine mandate in any of our districts. We're offering this as a service. We encourage anyone that if you do get an appointment somewhere else before the vaccine clinic, that you just let us know. We'll cancel the appointment and open up a slot for someone else that would like to have their students vaccinated in our town. Are there any questions on COVID testing or the vaccine clinic?
I have one. Once everybody's not everybody, but those who choose to vaccinate are fully vaccinated, should those testing protocols change? Because I know, like, when you fill it out, that was before there was the option of vaccine.
Right. So it's a great question. And there's other questions about what else might change when we reach a critical, vaccine percentage. And I wish I could answer that at this point. I continue to meet weekly with the Lake County Health Department. We are waiting for guidance from the Illinois Department of Health, Lake County Health, on where things might be able to change in terms of masking, distancing, lunch times. There's lots of things that might be changing soon. In terms of testing protocols, we will have it available for anyone who would like to continue to test. And if parents would like to revoke their consent at that point when their student is fully vaccinated, just let us know. But obviously that testing could be available as a convenience as well. I don't don't see a whole lot changing in the near future. It's going to take a while for students. Obviously, there's time in between the 2 shots, and then there's 2 weeks until you're fully vaccinated after that second shot. So there is going to be some time that will have to, take place before any of our students are really considered fully vaccinated. But I can tell you that students and staff who are fully vaccinated now do have the ability to stay in school if they have been a close contact, and they can just, test. If they're symptomatic, they can go for a test. It's not automatically an exclusion from school. So there are definitely some benefits that are already happening with students and staff who are vaccinated, but I can't say that I've had any updated guidance come my way in terms of how our system might change when we hit a critical mass. Tim? I'm sorry.
Nope. Go ahead, Tim.
Sorry. No, sorry. I didn't mean to raise my hand, but thank you for, since you called on me, thank you for for working with the district, Lake Forest and the villages to get this all set up. I think it's great that it's offered to the children in our community. So thank you. Sorry about that.
No problem.
If parents are willing to share I keep butting in. If parents are willing to share vaccination status, is that something the school wants to hear, or only if their kid is close contact or student?
So we have been collecting that information if we can. We have sent out a survey to ask parents to tell us their student's vaccination status. When a student is a close contact, we need that status to determine what needs to happen with that student. We contact them individually, but yes, we are open to having parents share that with us, and we'll probably send out a coordinated way to collect that information once we get in a little bit further down the road with this. Ann?
My question was along the same lines, because I know at the middle school, we sent out a survey about vaccination status. So would we do the same at elementary school?
Yep, I do. I've sent it out. We've had more cases in the last couple of days. We're definitely still experiencing, positive cases in the community, but I would say in terms of our numbers, they've gone way down. I think the health department is optimistic about the vaccination, interest in vaccination for students. There've been a lot of pop-up clinics. A lot of schools are trying to do this. My own children are going to be vaccinated in their home district. So I'm really, really optimistic and happy that we're offering lots of opportunities for those people who want to take advantage of it. And hopefully we'll be turning a corner after the first of the year. But again, as soon as I have that guidance, I'll be releasing that and letting folks know. Anything else on vaccines or COVID? I have one other exciting thing that I would like to just have recognition of. We did receive some communication from the high school about 14 former Lake Bluff students who have received the Illinois Seal of Biliteracy. These are students that achieved the Seal of Biliteracy in the 2020-2021 school year. The seal recognizes public high school graduates who have attained a high level of proficiency in one or more languages in addition to English. And as you know, students in District 65 begin their language learning early, and we offer 2 languages, which is wonderful, French and Spanish. And I want to recognize these students because attaining the Seal of Biliteracy is no small feat. This is a really big deal, and it's an incredible opportunity for them that is signified on their diploma, and they receive different recognition, and it's really a lot of work to go through this process, but it's really, really beneficial. And I want to just read the names of the students. If I can very quickly: Tierney Sasson, Kylie Kowalski, Grace Kellerman, Samuel Shen, William Yoon, Ethan Haller, Kayla Gottschall, Margot Pierce, Finola Somerville, Catherine Lee, Kerrigan Weston, Andrew Waymeyer, Samantha Wong, Mary Considine. And I apologize if I said anyone's name incorrectly, but I really just want to congratulate. If you know any of these kiddos, make sure you give them a pat on the back. That's a lot of work. We also had a bunch of students receive a commendation. And I have a special place in my heart for learning a second language and becoming fluent in that language. It's really, really a cool experience. And I just want to say congratulations to these students and to our our teachers, our language teachers in Lake Bluff District 65 are excellent. And there's a lot of articulation that goes on to make sure our students are successful. So
Congratulations, all.
And that is the end of my report. Jay, are you ready to go ahead with long-term projections? Still can't hear him.
It's a sign.
It is a sign. It's the sign, I think, is that Jay's been presenting too much at our meetings. Perhaps he's being shut out now.
Yeah, this is a.
Jay, you can maybe switch to phone audio. I don't know if you know how to do that, but at the, there he goes.
I can hear you.
Okay. That works.
That works.
Went away. We don't hear you again.
Now you look like you're muted. Nope. Can you call into the meeting? This is going to be a much shorter meeting if Jay can't. We'll have to somehow postpone.
Were there any of those other reports that could be covered in the meantime?
No, we have no more reports for tonight.
Jay, I'm going to change your role real quick and then bring you back into the meeting to see if that will help.
Thanks, Shelley.
Blame it on that giant Comcast outage this morning. It's all because of that.
There's a little foreshadowing this morning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jay, see if that works, if you can hit the unmute button.
Yay!
Oh. We can't see you, but we heard you say something.
That work?
Yep.
So far.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Give it a shot.
I'm going to share my screen. How's that?
That looks good.
Okay. All right, well, so tonight I'm going to go through the tax levy recommendation. We're going to approve the tentative tax levy tonight. This needs to be done at least 20 days prior to the approval of the final levy. And so last meeting, we went through kind of in detail how it's calculated and how to think about all the different terms and parameters. And tonight I'm going to just take you through the actual calculation, what parameters I'm using. And then, so last time we came at it from a how much are we allowed to ask for kind of perspective. So I want to do the 5-year projections to talk about sort of how much we need and come at it from that angle, and hopefully the two match. And then I'll take you through the recommendation. So if you recall, the tax levy that we can ask for is proportional to the CPI. So we're subject to the PTEL, which is the Property Tax Extension Limitation Law, which says that we're allowed to increase our tax levy by CPI, so that we basically hold our revenue constant in real terms, and then we're able to ask for additional money for new property, and because that new property often brings new students. So the CPI in December 2020, or the change in CPI from December 2019 to December 2020 was 1.4%. That is the CPI that is used in the tax levy calculation. Last year, that CPI change was 2.3%. The CPI increase is what all taxpayers in aggregate will see. So all existing homeowners in aggregate will see a tax increase of CPI. So we're looking at 1.4% this year. Existing property, I'm actually expecting to decrease by 1.4% in Lake Bluff. And as we'll see in a moment, if you look at the assessor's website, they're projecting all of Shields Township to decrease by only 0.5%. Lake Forest 67 district is going down by about 0.7%. And because this is a non-reassessment year, they don't look at every single property, but the assessor does look at individual neighborhoods and make adjustments to individual neighborhoods. So I talked to our Shields Township assessor and learned that the terrace properties are seeing a significant reduction or significant adjustment down in their property values, which is bringing down sort of the Lake Bluff School District existing EAV change down. This doesn't really impact how much the district collects in taxes, but it would impact you as an individual homeowner. So what that means is properties that are in other areas in Lake Bluff may see an increase greater than CPI because their assessments are going up relative to assessments in the terrace, or actually the assessments in the terrace are being reduced relative to other assessments. So they're going to be paying for us a higher share of that burden. And then also there's been a lot of assessment appeals. I don't know if this has anything to do with the pandemic or just the fact that I believe the assessor made it easier to appeal your taxes. Everything's online now. You used to have to fill out a paper form and submit it, and now it's really easy to just go on and appeal. So we're seeing a significantly higher level of appeals. And that also is doing some shifting of the tax burden. So if you as a board member get your bill and it's increases by more than 1.4%, those are probably some of the reasons. Here is the statistics off the website, and you can see that on average, they're applying a multiplier of 0.995 to get the home values at 1/3 the market value, or the assessed value at 1/3 the market value, which is the statute in Illinois in all counties except Cook. New property, as I said, you can we are able to levy or ask for additional taxes. Basically, when they calculate the rate, they apply the same rate to the existing property and to the new property. So this number is very important because this is all additional revenue to the district. Looking at my 5-year projections, so every year I take our existing budget and then make assumptions going out into the future and take a look at what our income, our revenue and expense will look like over the next 5 years and what that will do to fund balance. So some of the assumptions I've made are basically CPI next year. Right now we're running over 5%. So probably 5.5% is what the change from December 2020 to December 2021 will look like. And that property tax limitation law caps that at 5%. So in the projections you will see, I've included the 5%. That doesn't mean we have to ask for all 5, but that is what I'm going to start. That's my starting point in the projections. And then in the out years, I'm still projecting 2%, which is kind of the long-term average rate of inflation for the economy. New property, I'm projecting $2.5 million a year. That's pretty consistent with the historical averages that you saw on the last slide. And then the collection rate at 99.5%, which is very typical for Lake Bluff. I'm holding all other local and state revenue flat. All of the federal COVID money that we're getting, I'm ending this year, and then keeping other federal funding flat. So right now, we're seeing an abnormally high level of federal funding due to all of the COVID reimbursements and help. And so I'm basically returning those numbers to normal in the future. For expenditures, looking at salaries, we have a salary schedule that extends for an additional 2 years beyond this year. So I'm taking our existing staff and moving them along that schedule. And then for the new contract for years 3 to 5, I'm just using assumptions consistent with past negotiations. So I'm basically creating new contract terms kind of consistent with what we've seen in the past and projecting our salaries at those levels. We have, right now, I think we have 6 people in the retirement incentive program, and I'm projecting between 7 and 9 per year out for the next 5 years. We have a pretty long list of people who want to apply for that program, and so I'm continuing to add those people, project those people out into the future. For projection purposes, I have admin and non-licensed staff increases at 3%. Substitute teachers have not been adjusted recently, so I'm doing an adjustment of 10% to their salaries or to their daily pay rate next year, and then holding that flat. And then reducing all the extra COVID staff. So if you recall, we added some additional staff this year, again, with that federal money, a math coach, some health aides, additional social work support. And I'm projecting that to go away next year when the federal subsidy ends. And then I'm adding the technology administrator that you approved at the last meeting. I'm projecting benefit insurance premiums to increase at 5% per year, which is probably actually lower than medical trend, but a little bit higher than we saw this year and that we've seen in the past. As I have said, our cooperative does a very good job of holding rates down, but that's a pretty good rate of growth. That actually would be, I think it's fairly conservative and representative of what we will see. And then I'm continuing to increase the premium share for staff every year by 0.5 percentage points, which is kind of what we've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years. Yes, absolutely.
On that previous page, I didn't see the addition of the full-time sub. Is that included?
That was going to be a thing for this year, and I'm not projecting that out into the future. So that is something that if we think we're going to need it in the future, that's something to keep in the back of your mind as we look at what the trends are going forward. But that was just really to get through this year was the plan.
All right.
A lot of our contracts are tied to CPI. So our RJB is our night custodial contract that I'm projecting to increase at 5% in year 1 and then at 2% thereafter. The Olson Transportation contract is kind of on an annual basis, but we've been averaging at least 5% per year, if not more. I've got them in at 5% per year, just due to the wage pressure for drivers, the driver shortage, to keep that staffed. I'm projecting special education tuition increase at 5% and outplacements are flat. However, because we're so small and we have so few kids who we outplace to other tuition-based institutions, 1 or 2 kids can swing that number quite a bit. So there's a little bit of variability there or risk there, but I'm just keeping that flat. And then we have some additional staff that we're hiring again on a temporary basis through True North, our special education cooperative. And the assumption is that that additional staffing, it won't be needed in the future as well. And then the reduction in IT outsourcing to offset the hiring of that extra IT administrator. That was part of the proposal that, again, was approved last board meeting. Supplies, I'm increasing at 3% in year 1 and about 2% thereafter. We tend not to see the same kind of increases in supplies as other areas. And then capital expenditures, I'm forecasting out. I plan to spend $1 million next year in furniture purchases. So that has been forecasted for the next fiscal year. And then in addition to that, $450,000 per year going forward. That is a little bit more than we have been doing in the past, but based on our facility plan, we have some large needs going out in the future. Our facility plan did not really include technology purchases, which have been adding up and on a recurring basis are going to contribute to that spend. And then we also deferred a lot of spending last year just to get through the pandemic with the uncertainty. So we've got some projects to do. That's a very conservative number.
Jay, can I make a comment?
Yes.
Capital expenditures. Somebody who's seeing this for the first time, not familiar with what we've done historically, is going to see $1 million additional furniture purchase in year one is going to go, whoa, that's a lot of money. Why are we spending that much money? And I'll start it off by saying that we've been planning to upgrade furniture in our buildings ever since we renovated the middle school, whenever that was, 3 years ago, 4 years ago now, and even before that. And so this is something we've been putting off for years. I know that we have some furniture in some of our buildings that date back decades and decades. So this is not new. It's something that we've been pushing down the road for a while. So if you guys want to elaborate on that one at all, that would be probably good for the record.
No, that's a good point. We did do some furniture with the building remodel, but as you said, we could not include all of it, and we have not purchased furniture for the elementary school in a long time. Teaching methods have changed and the furniture needs have changed. And the original plan was actually to kind of space this out over 3 years, but then we get delayed a year by pandemic, and just due to the way we were able to operate last year, we had over $1 million surplus last fiscal year. So the need to space it out and phase it in over 3 years, I think, has gone away. And I'd prefer for everyone to be able just to do it at once and get what we want and do it all at once.
Yep.
So
thanks.
So this is what it looks like. If you could just briefly go back in history, this was kind of our high point where you can see that our fund balance was actually in excess of our total revenue for that year. We were generating some large surpluses in 10-11 and 11-12 and 12-13 additionally, or each year consistently. And that was where the board had decided to take some of that fund balance, pay down debt. And then if you look at the bars in 2013-14 actually did not take the full levy and reduced their ask to the community, reduced their taxes, and further reduced the fund balance. We did save some fund balance and spent a good chunk of it on the middle school renovation, but that reset sort of in 13-14 and in 12-13 reduced the levy in those years, and then it actually reduced it going forward, because if you recall from the last meeting, the levy is based on what you levied the prior, or what you extended the prior year. So by reducing the amount of taxes you extend for operations today, that limits what you're able to ask for tomorrow. And so the board made a very distinct effort, or, with knowledge, they purposely levied less in those 2 years to bring down that fund balance and to prevent the district from extending more in the future. But we basically reduced it to a level that was within our means, and since that time we have been operating just fine with that level and operating within our means for the community. So looking at sort of the last, from 16-17 on, we've been this is at post middle school, we've been operating pretty evenly, or pretty stable. We always have a balanced budget. And so you can see in 2021, our revenues equal our expenditures, and we're expecting to hold our fund balance constant. And you can see also just those two dotted lines, the lower one and the upper one, that's our board policy threshold limits. We would like to maintain our operating fund balance within 30% and 50% of our operating expenditures. And that's what those kind of dotted lines represent. So you can see that even with the 5% increase next year, we are not really, we're holding pretty steady right in the middle of our fund balance board policy at about 40%. We're increasing slightly our fund balance every year, having a slight surplus, but as our operating expenditures increase, and we want to keep the same percentage of operating expenditures in fund balance, our fund balance should increase slightly as well, although it's remaining pretty flat. I'll just pause there if there are any questions. I also, in the past, when we've seen large spikes in fund balance, in CPI, oftentimes the following year, because it's all based on growth, is lower, and you don't return to 2% growth, but you might dip down to 0% growth, just depending on what is causing that spike in CPI. So it is entirely possible that we could see a 5 and then a 0 or a negative CPI, in which case we would use 0 in our formula. And then also I modeled, if the board chooses not to take the 5%, I know Mark mentioned at the last meeting that as a taxing body, we want to coordinate with some of our other partners in the community, the village and the park district, and kind of maybe not hit everybody at once with large tax increases. So I've also modeled out what would it look like if we only took 2% next year and then 2% the following year. So look at the next slide. The dotted lines are just, the line is kind of what I did before, where based on all those assumptions I went through, and then based on a 5% CPI year and then 2% thereafter, our ending fund balance out in 26-27 would be 8.5%. And that changes by about $1 million a year or in total, depending on if you assume the next line down, that the dotted line is assuming 5% next year and a 0% the following year, which could happen. The last time the CPI was above 4%, we did see 0% the following year. And so if we take the 5 next year and then CPI doesn't come in, comes in lower, we're looking at that dotted line. And then the dashed line is, representing a 2% CPI next year. So if the board chooses to not take the full 5 and to take 2, and then we get a 2 the following year, that dotted line or the dashed line ending at $6.5 million out in the out years and right at our 30% threshold is what that would look like. Having said that, we balance the budget every year, and what this projection assumes is that I just kind of set all the parameters now and I wind it up and I let it go. And that's not how we run the school district. Every year we're looking at reevaluating, what we want to spend, what we need to spend, and balancing the budget each year. So I don't, a downward trend in fund balance does not worry me at all. That's pretty reasonable, actually, especially when you consider that we have contractual obligations to staff and contractors that increase at CPI every year. And if you don't increase your revenue at the same rate, and then obviously your, that's what your line or trend is going to look like. Oops, it does. But then, so also additionally, it does not incorporate any big impacts. This is kind of forecasting what we know. If we did, Stonebridge does happen, we get lots of extra kids. That is not contemplated by this projection. We have some opportunity for some green energy projects, which is part of my report later. That does not include those. There's also an opportunity, if we do have to shift transportation significantly by adding more routes, or if we're able to share buses with another school district, we could see some big changes in our transportation spend. That is not included. And then if there are any mandates or federal programs to increase or expand pre-K to be full-time, that is not also included. Additionally, there's always talk of tax freezes. That hasn't come up in a while, but the legislature if CPI is 5% next year and the tax or the, constituents see large tax increases and complain to their constituent or to their legislators, there could be more tax freeze legislation in the future. The pension system, we haven't heard a lot about it lately, but it's still probably one of the worst funded pension systems in the country. And they're constantly thinking of ways to fix it. And we haven't, we've been focused on COVID lately, but a lot of the solutions push costs off to the districts. Those are not part of this. And then just wage pressure in general. We're having a really hard time filling our non-licensed positions. Our guest teachers are very hard to find. So I'm expecting, to see salaries maybe increase at higher than that 3% rate that I've forecasted going out. Now, these tend to be some of the lower paid positions, but those are still increases that we did not think about. So based on all that, I mean, this is again in the out years. We know for sure that we have a 1.4% CPI this year for our tax levy, and we definitely need to ask for the full CPI this year. We want to keep our fund balance within the desired range. We do need to keep growing our revenue to keep up with our contractual expenditures. And by asking for the entire CPI, that will preserve our ability to add to levy what we need to in the future. And I just wanted to give you some, a lot of the things that I was talking about are really just want you to think about, because this year with the 1.4% CPI, it's really easy to say, yeah, we need to take all of it. And it's really easy to calculate, okay, this is what we're allowed to ask for and to ask for it. Next year, the conversation might be a little bit different. We haven't really seen CPIs that high before in the past. So I wanted to give you some food for thought and see if there are any other questions before I give you the final recommendation that you'll need to approve later this evening.
Anybody have any questions for Jay? I've got a thought, Jay.
Sure.
Just as a clarification, on the page you showed with the risks.
Yes.
You just to clarify, you said, and you probably don't realize you said this, but you said we didn't think about you. I forget exactly what you said, but I want to make sure that whoever heard this knows that you guys spent a lot of time thinking and talking and considering all these risks, but they are specifically and deliberately not included in the projections, right?
Yes. The word contemplate was probably a poor choice.
I don't know what your word was. I forget, but
the model is not included in the model, but these are things that we're thinking about all the time.
Yeah.
And so they're too hard to forecast.
Understood. So I have an ask that I would ask the board to consider. I know this, so that potential 5 years 5% CPI next year is very substantial, and it is. I'm really happy that we are beginning this conversation a full year in advance, because we don't really know the implications, and it may change as the year progresses. But I would ask you and the administrative team, whoever works on these things and brainstorms on things, is there a way to consider modeling some of these risks, the steady state and the risk ideas you have here, like to show us, holding all things else steady, what happens if we have X more expenditures due to a change in transportation or expansion of pre-K or pension cut, you know what I mean? Just to give the board and the community and yourself, I suppose, some idea, so we can actually have a conversation about risk a little more. I feel like if we don't have some kind of modeling going on, it's very hard for me to contribute to a conversation about the what ifs and the risks we're willing to tolerate moving forward. I don't know if that's too much to ask, or is that something that's possible? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I actually did do that a number of years ago when there was more proposals on the table, when things were being floated around in terms of cost shifts and tax freezes and things like that.
I remember. Yeah.
Lately it's been kind of quiet in that area. So I could go back and model again, some of the things we've heard in the past. I did not do that for this round simply because, I just wanted people to be aware that those are out there. The size of them or the impact is still a little bit nebulous right now and uncertain, and it may not even happen. I think it was a little more imminent at the time I did the modeling, but we certainly could pick any number of these and make any kinds of assumptions we want and then play it out through the model. That's why we have models, and that's the purpose. It's pretty easy to do that. So,
and I think just knowing that is something that will be helpful to the board. We will probably be talking about some transportation shifts sooner than any of these other issues. And we can keep that in mind for the discussion that the modeling will help in terms of decision-making. So as each issue comes up or we get closer to having to make a decision, I think that's important for us to remember that is helpful.
Yeah, and Jay, just to be clear, I didn't expect you to do that tonight, but I just think if we're doing this a year in advance, it's a good thing to put on put on our radar and maybe periodically pick one or two and play with it. I also want to point out that I saw something online that there's a November village meeting, I believe the week of Thanksgiving, perhaps Thanksgiving week, right around that time, that is going to discuss a potential settlement agreement with Stonebridge. So we may want to tune into that to see. It's not going to tell us how many new kids are coming, but it might give us some idea of what the future could look like with that development. So
I also just want to point out that just as we know now what next year's CPI will be before we do our levy, next year when we have the 5, we'll know what the following year is going to be probably by this time. So we'll be able to speak about, if it's going to be 5 and then 2 or 5 and then 5, like if it's 2 5s in a row, that will completely change everything. But we will have some knowledge, better knowledge to make the decisions with.
That's good to know. Can I ask a question quick?
Sure.
We don't have to talk about this now, but maybe next time when we do get closer and we're talking about whether we go with the 5 or the 2%. The 2%, you modeled it out, and that gets us really low to our bottom threshold of our reserve, right? So if that ended up being something that we went with, and then we have a problem where we dip below that threshold, could you talk about how we would get that back up into the right, into the safe zone, if you will?
Great question. So there's 2 ways to do it. First off, if we as a board are smart about if we choose not to take the 5, there are ways to do it that maintain our flexibility in future levies, so that if that situation does arise, we have the ability to increase taxes and levy more to get our fund balance back where it needs to be, without doing a referendum or anything like that. And it essentially involves still levying the 5% in operating funds, but then abating our debt service to bring the total tax rate that people see up by 2%. And then by doing that, we have complete flexibility of how much of that debt service we want to pay out of our operating funds. And we can basically, our increase will be to taxpayers in the future. This is one way to eliminate the risk of having too low of a fund balance. And then really the only other way is by reducing expenditures. So it might be looking at, some of these assumptions, staffing, capital projects, things like that. So.
Great, that's helpful. Thank you.
The other thing I want to offer for board members who are new to this process, it's not simple, or it's a little bit complicated to understand all this. And I do want to offer, if you'd like to sit, if anyone would like to sit kind of one-on-one with Jay and I, or a little small group tutorial in between now and the next time we have to have this discussion, we're open to that too. Because there's a lot of variables here, and I want to make sure everyone knows that they can ask whatever questions they need to, or schedule a separate time even to do that.
There's also probably classes on this at the III conference if people are going. There's usually several financial-based class options during the day for people to choose from.
But the good news is that we are in good shape as a district financially and have resources. So, and have the choices that we do and the ability to handle some of the risks that are out there.
Yep.
So the recommendation that is in your board packet and the resolution is to ask for the full CPI of 1.4% for next year. The projected EAV is 676 million, which is a reduction of 1.1% total. That's the reduction of 1.4 in existing property, and then the additional new property of 2.5 million. So that would mean our operating tax extension, the increase seen in total by existing property, will be 1.4%. We'd ask for 16.5 million. The impact of new property is an additional 60,000 or 0.4%. And then this extra 50,000 is money that I'm putting in to the ask in order to make sure that all the new property owners are going to pay the full amount. We may or may not get any of that 50 depending on how new property actually comes in. So the total operating levy is 16.6 million, and a net increase of 2.1%. Adding in debt service gets us to 18.8 million, or a total increase on tax bills of 2.0%. Our rate would go from 2.69 to 2.78. So our rate is going up a little bit. And again, that's because our dollar increase is greater than our CPI increase. And so the rate has to offset in order to make sure that we get the dollars that we're asking for.
Jay, can I circle back to the new, just for my own purposes, but also people who aren't familiar with this, the new property cushion and rounding of $49,740. You put that in there because you can't go back and ask for more if you ask for too little to begin with, right?
That's right.
And so if the new property number is higher than you thought, you wouldn't have asked for as much. It's to cover you should it be higher than expected, right?
If new property came in at 3 million and I did not add that additional 50,000, then I wouldn't get all I would only get 6468 instead of 70 or 80 or whatever it turned out to be.
Yeah.
So they will never extend more than is allowed by calculation. But I could ask for 20 million. And if the calculation is 18.8, they will never extend more than 18.8. But if I ask for 18.0 and it comes out to 18.8, then they'll only extend what I ask for.
That's
so
yep.
That's the thinking there. And it's a really modest amount. And basically what I do is I assume a higher new property than I think is ever possible. 4 million. The assessor's really good at estimating it. And so I'll pick 4 million, 4.5 million, recalculate it based on that amount, and then take the difference. And that's kind of that. And then just to true up to round the numbers to even numbers in the ask is how I get to that number.
Yep. Thank you. Any questions is that your last slide, Jay?
That is it. Yep.
So if anybody has any further questions for Jay? If anybody in the community has questions about any of that stuff, don't hesitate to reach out to your favorite board member or to Dr. Leali or to Mr. Khan. I'd be glad to help you or point you in the right direction to get your questions answered. So our next subject, circling around, I feel like we're doing kind of figure eights on our agenda here. I think we're heading to the financial audit, right? So we have Nick Cavallari from Baker Tilly, our auditor, will provide a summary on our most recent audit. Welcome, Nick.
Well, thank you for having me here this evening. That was a great levy presentation. I always enjoy going through those. And now I'm going to talk some more numbers to everybody because we have issued our report on the district's comprehensive annual financial report, which is a very robust document. I'm sure all the board members have received a copy of it, and it's a couple hundred pages long, and it goes over in great detail the district's financial results for fiscal year 21. When we perform a financial statement audit, we look at a lot of different documents. We'll look at the comprehensive annual financial report. The district is required to have a annual financial report, a regulatory report that's required to be filed with the Illinois State Board of Ed. It's commonly referred to as the AFR. That document has to be audited. We will also provide assurances over a document called the Consolidated Year-End Financial Report, which is another filing that has to be issued with the Grant Accountability and Transparency Unit of the state of Illinois. One of the things that is new to the district this particular fiscal year is that you are required to have what they call a single audit, which is a federal compliance audit. And if your district or government, I should say, expends over $750,000 of federal award monies, you're required to have a single audit, which is essentially a compliance audit over how you utilize those funds in accordance with a compliance supplement that the Office of Management and Budget issues. So your district just came right over that threshold in fiscal year 21. One of the primary driving factor of that was due to the pandemic, you operated a summer food service program, or essentially your food service program to your community to assist in the recovery efforts of the pandemic, and that particular program pushed you over the $750,000 threshold. So the single audit has different time frames for when it has to be completed by. One of the things that the federal government has done is acknowledge the fact that they were late in issuing some of their guidance, and that a lot of local units of government are faced with a lot of challenges. So one of the things that they've done is issued an extension on when that single audit has to be filed. Typically within the federal government's guidelines, it's 9 months after your fiscal year end, and they've provided an extension of an additional 6 months. Now, we would never anticipate waiting that long to complete your single audit, but this particular year, given the challenges, we performed the financial statement audit, and now we're actually working on the single audit for that particular program, and we'll issue our reports, probably within the next month or two. I don't anticipate any challenges based on the preliminary results that we've had. So the single audit will be issued separately. Just wanted to kind of put that out there, and that was something new. There's a document that has to be audited by us. It's called the Schedule of Expenditures for Federal Awards. So that's another document that will render assurances over, and then we'll also say if you had any compliance findings or control findings when we complete our testing, which I don't anticipate based on what we've seen so far. But the type of assurance that we were able to render on your financial statements is what you would call an unmodified audit opinion. It's the highest level of assurance that you can receive from the external auditor that your financial statements present fairly in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and that you have all the necessary disclosures based on the results presented within those financial statements. Your district also issues a comprehensive annual financial report, which has a lot of additional schedules, 10-year trend history information regarding financial results, key demographic data about your community. It is really a repository of a lot of good information, and if you had time and you wanted to thumb through it, I would encourage you to do that. There is one particular section that, in my opinion, is well done, well written, and it's the management's discussion and analysis. These comprehensive annual financial reports are lengthy, and they can be a little intimidating at first, but if you really want to get a good understanding of where the district resulted in the year for the financial statements, that particular document, I think, is a really worthwhile read. It also has some good pertinent information to the reader regarding some things that management has considered for factors bearing on the future of the district's finances. So, with that being said, financial highlights, I won't read the numbers to you tonight, but I'd be happy to take any questions. But ultimately, looking at your results, from what I can tell, the district was balanced and working within its financial resources on an operating basis during fiscal year 21. There is a score that all school districts will receive in the state of Illinois. It's a metric that the state it's called a financial profile score, and it's included in the annual financial report. It's a 0 to 4 point weighting metric, and it has some key areas like revenues to fund balance ratio, looking at your days of cash on hand, just a couple of those metrics. And your district has received a 3.9 out of a 4.0 scale on that metric, and that's the same result that you received in the prior fiscal year on their weighting system. And the little 0.1 tick that you get down is based on the ratio of your outstanding debt compared to your statutory debt limit. They give you a 3 on that instead of a 4, because your ratio is just a little bit below that 4.0 metric. But ultimately, you see balanced financial statements, results within your operating funds, and things look to be going in good, in the right direction based on your budgeted and anticipated results. So, with that being said, I would be more than happy to take any questions about the results of the financial statements.
Anybody have any questions for Nick? I don't think you have any.
Oh, I did good. Well, listen, thank you guys very much for your time this evening. And if anything comes up after you have a chance to thumb through that thing, just please let me know. I'd be more than happy to take a call from anyone.
Thanks, Nick.
Okay, thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay.
I do just want to thank Jay and his team. That's a lot of work that goes into that report, the information in there. Obviously, all of the work that Jay and his team do every year to make sure that we're in a good spot and we're spending money in the right places. And just want to express my gratitude for all of that hard work.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. We appreciate it. It's huge, and Jay gets very involved. All right, I'm going to move on, unless there's something I didn't see that we missed. Moving on. Item 8, which is our action items. Our first action item tonight, 8A, is the approval of the 2021 Annual Statement of Affairs for publication. School code states that school districts and joint agreements are required to complete the Annual Statement of Affairs, ASA, and publish in local newspapers all salary schedules and vendor contracts over $2,500. School districts and joint agreements are also required to submit the completed electronic form to the Illinois State Board of Education, excluding payments of $500 to $999. That statement must be published in a local newspaper no later than December 1 annually, and submitted to ISB, the Illinois State Board of Education, electronically no later than December 15th annually. ISB will publish the Annual Statement of Affairs on the ISB website by January 15th of the following year. This is something we do every year. It is a pretty lengthy form, but it covers all of our contracts and teacher salaries, and all the salaries in the district, right? It's in your board packet. If anybody has any questions for Jay, please raise them now.
What newspaper do we publish it in?
We publish it in both the Lake County News Sun and the Lake Forester. Actually, that's something that the previous board had decided to do for transparency reasons. We're only required to do it in one publication of local circulation. So the Lake County News Sun checks that box, but we also do the Lake Forester just to get it out to more people in the community.
There's fewer and fewer newspaper options out there.
Yeah.
That's why I asked.
Are going away, hopefully. Like a lot of it has to be on our website as well. So it's out on our website. And things like we used to have to publish the prevailing wage information. Now we don't have to do that anymore. It's just on our website. I'm expecting a lot of these things to go that way, hopefully, at some point.
So any other questions for Mr. Khan on the Annual Statement of Affairs for publication? All right. May I have a motion to approve the Annual Statement of Affairs as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Ann, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, who was second? I'm sorry.
Lauren.
Lauren.
Thanks, Lauren. Lauren Hirsch.
Yes.
Carrie Steinbach,
Yes.
Tim Penich,
Yes.
Amy Connell Donahue,
Yes.
Andy Duran,
Andy had to leave the meeting.
oh. Ann Hill, yes. Mark Barry,
Yes. The motion is approved. Item 8B, the approval of the 21-22 tentative levy. You saw that Jay gave an extensive presentation on that earlier, and we know all the details. Is there any further questions or commentary that somebody would like us to raise or make for the record on that? Okay, may I have a motion to approve the 21-22 tentative levy as presented by the administration?
so moved.
Can I have a second? I'll second.
Second.
And can we have a roll
Carrie,
call?
Carrie Steinbach,
Yes.
Tim Penich,
Yes.
Amy Connell Donahue,
Yes.
Ann Hill, yes. Mark Barry,
Yes.
sorry. Lauren Hirsch,
Yes.
Where's that Ann Hill? She's never calls.
I
when I
know,
call
she's
her.
so tardy, I tell you.
Something I would do. Item C, personnel report. The personnel report can be found in your board packet. I will read it to you now. The personnel report for November 9th includes one non-licensed new hire, I apologize in advance for mispronouncing names, Araceli Alvarado Ocon, a health aide at the middle school, effective November 1st. It's a new position at $18 an hour. And resignations, unfortunately, also includes Araceli Alvarado Ocon, the health aide at the middle school, effective November 4th, for leaving for personal reasons. The resignation also includes Susan Banks, the elementary school secretary at the elementary school, effective November 30th, for personal reasons. Are there any questions or comments about the personnel report? It's unfortunate that we lost that person. I hope we are able to find help for our health staff soon, because I know they need that help. May I have a motion to approve the personnel report for November 9th, 2021, as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
I'll second.
roll call, please.
Tim Penich,
Yes.
Amy Connell Donahue,
Yes.
Ann Hill, yes. Mark Barry,
Yes.
Lauren Hirsch,
Yes.
Carrie Steinbach,
Yes.
Motion is approved. Item 8D is the consent agenda. This month's consent agenda includes the open session meeting minutes from October 26, 2021 for the regular Board of Ed meeting. It includes the closed session meeting minutes for October 26, 2021, the regular Board of Ed meeting. It includes the treasurer's report, the impress report, the bills report, and the P card report. Would anybody like any of those items pulled out for individual discussion? Ann, did you just raise your hand? No.
my husband just walked in. I was waving to him. Sorry.
Sorry. All right. If everybody's okay with the consent agenda in the current format, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda for November 9th, 2021 as presented by the administration?
So moved.
So moved.
All right. Carrie, you be second.
Carl, sure, I'm second.
Amy Connell Donahue,
Yes.
Ann Hill, yes. Mark Barry,
Yes.
Lauren Hirsch,
Yes.
Carrie Steinbach,
Yes.
Tim Penich.
Yes.
All right. The motion's approved. Item 9 is FOIA requests. We had none this month. Item 10 is the opportunity for public comment. Lisa, do we have anybody in the audience? Shelley, any written or comment on Zoom?
No public comment at this time.
Thank you. And then this is a little different than usual. Typically, we do our closed sessions before the meeting, but because of the change in schedule tonight, we're going to not adjourn the whole meeting just yet. We are going to adjourn. We are going to convene into closed session. So at 6:14 PM, may I have a motion to convene into closed session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. Also to discuss litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular district has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the district finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into closed meeting minutes. May I have that motion?
I'll move.
Second?
Second.
Second.
I'm going to have a roll call vote on that.
Ann Hill, yes. Mark Berry,
Yes.
Lauren Hirsch,
Yes.
Carrie Steinbach,
Yes.
Tim Penich,
Yes.
Amy Connell Donahue.
Yes.
All right, so we are going into closed, and what we need to do, just for people watching, because this is a little different than usual, is we're going to all exit out of this Zoom session, and Dr. Leali sent you a separate link a little while ago for a closed session link. We will then, after closed session, not reconvene at this on this link. We're just going to come out and close the session, closed open. So there's nothing to stay tuned for. There will be no action taken after closed session. So we're going to shut down this Zoom and then open the next one in closed session. So I guess that's it, right, Dr. Leali?
That's it. Thanks,
All right.
everyone.